Hey, so I just finished RAM digging a pretty simple set. It's a Game Boy homebrew, pretty short, free points. And I thought I would make this just walking through sort of the RATools process and just implementing the whole set there. So the first thing you're going to want to do is once you download it, just open it up. And I believe that it prompts you to do this, but the first thing that you need to do is go into your settings and specify your emulator directory. It is going to read from here to look at the code notes and the achievements and all that. So this does, you have to point this at the emulator you're doing your development on. In a lot of cases, this is RALibretro, but it can be other stuff too. And once you have done that, you can just go to File, New Script, and then you type in your game ID. And if you've hooked it up to your emulator correctly, it should find pretty much everything. Sometimes you have to sort of close and reopen the emulator, or maybe close and reopen the code notes for it to find stuff, but it should show up everything here. If there are existing achievements, it will show those here as well. And I like to go down here to dump nodes for all, and then function names. I like snake case. You can kind of pick anything, but it will auto-generate memory accessor functions for all this. So once you go ahead and click create, you can see what it creates here. And so it's pretty nice. It puts all your code notes here nice and formatted in the comments, and then a function here to generate it. So if I wanted to access inventory keys here, I could just type inventory keys into the script, call it, and it will access this byte, which is where the code node is for my inventory keys. All right, I'm actually going to go up here and save my script right away, even though it's just the code notes right now. Because what I like to do is edit it in another editor. I do find the sort of built-in RATools text editor here is just a little bit, it's a little bit buggy. I'm more comfortable in, my usual place. Feel free to use this, but also just know that you can absolutely edit this in another text editor if you're more comfortable that way. Okay, and I have the script open in Vim here, which is what I use. And if you use something like VS Code, I think VS Code has an extension now to deal with RAScript and add some features. Vim, I believe there's a way to add that as well, although I haven't done it yet. But just wherever you're comfortable doing it. Now, the first thing I'm going to do here is actually do the rich presence, because if you do one thing at all in RATools, it should be rich presence. It's a lot easier to do this way. You can certainly do it the regular way and just type and edit the file, the text file for RP, but it's often a lot easier with RATools, and so this is probably the first thing you should prioritize learning with RATools. So I'm just going to do it first here, even though I kind of usually save it for last. But anyway, I'm just going to make a little comment here for it. You don't really need to do that. I just like to keep things organized. And I'm also just going to open up a second window here and just have that scrolled up to my code notes so I can look through that, especially this current screen one. It's going to be useful for RP. So one thing that's really common in rich presence is a lookup where you have some text strings that you want to display based on a memory value, and we have that here. So I'm just going to copy this whole thing, bring it over here, and I'm going to write screen names. And in RATools, I'm just creating a variable here called screen names. This can be named whatever you want. I'm setting it equal, and then I'm opening a curly brace and closing it. And what this is called a dictionary in RATools, and you can basically map a value to another value. So in this case, I would have my 0, and that maps to the string boot, and I write that with a comma, and then 01 maps to the dog park, and a comma, and then so on, and then the last one wouldn't have a comma. So I'm just going to paste in all of mine from the code notes and clean it up a bit to get it formatted. All right, so you can see now it's sort of formatted correctly. I did have to split out the duplicated values here because there unfortunately is no way to just map multiple values like that in a dictionary in RATools, but it doesn't take too long. It's fine. And if it would take too long, if it was like, oh, there's 100 different values that you'd be in the grocery store with, then you would handle that differently. But for the case of this lookup, it's kind of easier just to duplicate the values like this. So to actually use this in your RP, you are going to want to create a new lookup, and I like to prefix all of my rich presence stuff with RP underscore just to keep it straight, because in RATools, all your rich presence stuff uses sort of a different type of variable from other things. So I like to just keep it simple like this. Like, for example, this lookup here, you could use this elsewhere in your RATools if you had reason to. But this, what I'm about to make down here, is for RP only, and it will only work that way. So this is what screen we're on. So I'm going to name it RP screen, and I'm going to set that equal to rich_presence_lookup. And this is a function, so we're going to call it by opening parentheses. We give it a name that will show up in the rich presence script, so we'll call this screen. We have to pass in the expression, which is basically the memory address. So we're going to type, well, actually, no, this function is already set up for us. You can see on the right. So we're just going to do current_screen, and that's going to make sure that the rich presence knows where to look this value up from. The dictionary is what we just created. We called it screen names. And then you can pass in a fallback, which basically means if your value doesn't match anywhere in there, it will use this instead, and this will show up with an asterisk in your rich presence. And so for our fallback here, we're just going to say in-game, and we're going to close that. And so now we have that, and we can use it in our RP. Now, the way that you get your RP to actually show up in the RP line is with a display, and there is a function called rich presence display that you can use for that. And so for this, it's just a format string here. So we can just say, for now, let's test it out. Let's say current screen, and then we're going to put a 0 in curly braces. And then we're going to pass in another parameter, and this is going to be our lookup variable, so RP_screen. And so this is going to create a rich presence display that just always maps your value to this lookup. So let's just save that. Back over to RATools, you can hit F5 to refresh your script if it's already open. You can go File, Revert, which just reloads it from disk. And now if we scroll down, we can see that the things we just typed in are all there. Again, you could do that in this window from the beginning if you wanted to. And now on the left here, you can see our rich presence is here, and it sort of looks similar to how you would expect. And the way to sort of get things into your emulator, into the actual set, is just right click over here and do update local. You can also hit Control L, and it will show up. Say if we had 100 achievements here, it would show up, and you could check all the boxes. Well, they're checked by default, which is nice. And then you just update them all at once. Now we can open up our emulator. And again, you want to make sure this is the same emulator as you are doing your dev on. And if we open up the rich presence here with the rich presence monitor, we can see right now it says current screen, title screen. And if we load a state here, we're playing Zap Zap. And that is what we're doing. So we can see that's working. And just to double check here, if we open up our asset list and we go to edit our rich presence like you sort of normally would without RATools, if we open it up here, we can see that lookup that we just made, and make this window a little smaller, a lot smaller. And scroll down, we can see the display, and it's this current screen situation. So the gist of this game is that you have a to-do list that you're completing tasks on, and there's an address in memory that keeps track of how many of them you've completed. And so it auto-generated from the code node here. This byte keyword tells RATools that it's 8-bit, which it read from this size tag here. And I'm going to go ahead and add that to the rich presence as well. So I'm going to make RP tasks, and we're going to use rich presence macro. And this function is going to be looking at the different built-in macros that rich presence has. So you can see the list of them either on the RATools wiki or the retro achievements docs on the rich presence page. They're all there. The most common one that you're going to use is number, which will just take it and straight up display it as a number. It won't do any sort of padding or decimal, time transformations on it or anything, just the number. And it will know it's 8-bit by this byte thing here that's sort of typing in rich presence. It's going to do 0xh, and you can see that in the compiled thing. But here we can just do tasks completed, because this function calls this byte, and that tells you that it's 8-bit. But basically that's simple. We're going to go ahead and add that here, tasks completed. For the other format, the last one was 0. We're just going to up that to 1, and then pass in RP tasks right there. And if we save that and do the same steps as before, we can go ahead and open up our rich presence again, and you can see format number here, and we're passing in tasks completed with that 0xh, so it knows it's 8-bit. and with this memory address here. And if we head in game, it says 0. If we go ahead and return our library book, that should go ahead and increase to 1. Okay, now while this does work, it's a little simple. It's a little boring. You know, the sort of to-do list thing is, you know, checking things off a list. So I want to add that here. So I'm going to create another lookup here, and I will just have this be checkmark, and I'll make another dictionary. And this game specifically, you can see on the right here, there is a lot of different sort of 8-bit Boolean values. So 0 is no and 1 is yes. And these bits get flipped when you do things in the game. So I'm just going to have 0 equal to a check mark. This is just the Unicode check mark. I just Googled it and copied from there. And then 1 equal to a Unicode X mark, just to go along with the check. It's sort of the same style. You could use the letter X. It's fine either way, really. All right, so now that we have our check mark sort of dictionary here, it's going to be mapping this 0 to the 1. We have 4 different tasks in this game that I want to show up in the rich presence this way. So we're going to have to make lookups for all of them. And so they are file taxes. Let's just do this one first. And we're going to call this checked. And then we are going to pass in mailed tax return. And then checkmark is our dictionary. And we don't really need a fallback for this one. This value should never be anything but 0 or 1. So I'm just going to leave that out and it will default to blank. Now what I'm going to do is just duplicate this line 3 times and then change each one of these to the other 4 tasks, or the other 3. Okay, so that should all be set up there. Now something to watch out for is when you have multiple things that want to address the same lookup in RP, you want to make sure that when you create that lookup in RATools that it has the same name here, because this name is what RATools is going to use to actually make that lookup, you know, put this dictionary into the text file itself. And it's going to, if it's the same name, it can reuse the same one. But if it's not, it will just duplicate it, which is not the end of the world. But, you know, there's no real reason to have it do that when it can just reference the same one. So you want to have this the same if you're using the same sort of dictionary for them. So I'm just going to add these to what we currently have. Actually, we're just going to replace the tasks thing with it. So we're going to put them in square brackets. So the square brackets will show up in the RP itself, and then the curly brace with the number is how you actually reference sort of the things that you want to format into the strings. For this one, for this 4th one here, I'm just going to hard code in an X and just have it say call parents. And that's because you actually have 5 tasks in the game, and sort of the joke of it is you can't call your parents, but because you don't have the energy for it. But anyway, since that can never actually get checked off, I'm not bothering to add anything for it dynamically here. I'm just hard coding it in because I don't want to sort of give away the joke of the whole game in the RP. And I guess you want to watch out for that, but can't really think of many times that things like that would come up. Anyway, now it's just filling in these in the right order. And when I say right order, you just have to match the order of the formatting. So 0, 1, 2, 3. You could put these numbers in a different order. It will be like the first thing you pass in after it is the 0, and then the next is the 1. It's easier just to keep them in order, but sometimes there are reasons not to do that. Okay, once again, we're going to save and check it out in game. And I've just realized I've done something a little silly. I did these backwards. So 0 means you haven't done it, 1 means you have done it. So we're just going to change those around really quick. And I'll go ahead and put them in order, even though order doesn't matter in dictionaries, but get that right there. It's easier to keep things in order, as I said before, about a different thing. So now let's check this out in game. And over here in the RP, we can see this checked lookup is here. And if we look at the display, you can see the 5 tasks mentioned here. If we go ahead and look in game, right now, the only one that's checked off is return overdue library book, and that is reflected in the RP here. And if we go ahead and buy the coffee filters, I didn't realize that unpausing would bring back the people in line. Let's buy the coffee filters, and then you can see it's now checked off in the RP. And if we pause, it's checked off in game as well. All right, back over in the script, there's one thing that I want to do to finish off this RP. Like I said, it's a very simple game. The RP is going to be pretty simple as well. But right now, if we booted up the game, it's going to show all this status stuff, and some of it might not even be 0 or 1. It might just look weird. And certainly if you're not in game, if you're just on the title screen or the boot, these values, I mean, they wouldn't have meaning anyway. So in those cases, near 100% of the time, you're going to want to have a separate display that just says something about, you're on the menu or something like that. So we are going to add a rich presence conditional display. And now what this looks like in rich presence is you would have your display line, and then you would start a line with a question mark, and then you would have your condition here, and then end it with a question mark, and then you can type the rest of your display string. So here, how you accomplish that is with this conditional display function. But what is our condition actually going to be here? So you can see there's a few different values for this screen, and there's a few that we don't want to consider in-game, right? So boot, so 0, title screen, opening cutscene is arguable. Opening cutscene I might leave alone. Credits I'll probably leave alone. So let's just worry about boot and title screen for now. So boot is when it's at 0, and title screen is when it's between 12 and 15 hex. So for our conditional display here, we are going to say our condition is if our current screen equals 0, or our current screen is greater than or equal to 0x12, and our current screen is less than or equal to 0x15. So that's between both of those values. And now I'm going to put some brackets around this AND condition. It's always good practice to, put brackets when you're mixing ORs and ANDs, because it's kind of hard to keep straight in your head what the order of operations is there. It kind of varies between different contexts, not in RATools necessarily, but just in general, it's good to just be explicit with it, because you're less likely to make a mistake that way. And now we have our condition, and the rest of the function is just like the display. So we type what we want it to say, and that's going to just be for now on the title screen, and we don't want any formatting, so we can just close that off there. Once we save that and update it in game, we can see that there's an added display here, and this is sort of where RATools shines with RP, because you can see the way I typed it in the RP, it's pretty readable, and then here in the RP, it's really not. I mean, you can learn it, and you could type this yourself, and that's fine. I mean, it's really not that bad once you know what you're looking at, but it's really a lot easier, especially with variable names like current screen, rather than having to constantly remember, like, okay, what address is this? Okay, C6AC, and then constantly referencing back and forth. It's just kind of nice in that way. But anyway, you can see it's sort of working there as on the title screen. So right now, it's just the one we had before. If I reset the game, now it's going to say on the title screen until I go ahead and start the game. All right, so with the basic RP done, there is something I want to add to it, and I want to make the wording a little better. But I think that's okay for now. Let's move on to the achievements. So let's go. You don't have to break things off with comments like this. It's just a little easier to keep organized, in my opinion. You can do it however you want. The way that you do achievements in RATools is with a function just called achievement. And the parameters that you pass into here are ordered, but you can't pass them in by name. I like to do it by name because it's a little easier to keep track of. You don't have to remember what the correct order is or anything like that. So first we're going to go title, and let's just make the title back to bed, and description. Let's just have that try to go back to bed. I think I want to go back and make the sort of character of the set a little more lively, but for right now, let's just do these placeholders. And now you want to put in some points. This will be a 1-pointer. And the trigger parameter is really the sort of bread and butter of it. This is going to be the logic of the actual achievement. Now, going back to bed in this game, there is an interaction byte that gets set whenever you sort of interact with things. And the one for going back to the bed is this value 8 right here. And you can see that's in my code notes. And I want to just talk for a second about thinking ahead, because, you know, it's not strictly necessary when noting things with like a lot of different sort of values like this. It's not strictly necessary to list out every single one, right? And this certainly isn't every single one in the game. But when I was going through and making this code note, like, I had some idea of what I wanted to make achievements out of. And when I noticed something that was going to be useful later, I went ahead and marked it down in the code note. And that's really good because, well, one, it's going to help out anybody later who's trying to look at the achievement, myself included, and try to figure out why the logic is written the way it is, which is sort of the main purpose of them. But also, even thinking about myself sitting down here right now, trying to write the logic, I don't have to go back and forth to the game and say, okay, click over to the memory inspector. Okay, what is this value now? Go do the thing in the game. Okay, what is the value? I can just look at it in the code notes and do it. And obviously, once everything is done, I'm going to test everything. And I'm sure I'll make some mistakes and have to fix some things. But just taking out that extra step right now makes the whole process go a lot smoother. And I mean, you'll thank yourself, right? So if you're making your code notes, if you're doing the RAM digging, think ahead, think about what you're going to need in the future, and just make a note of it, right? It can't hurt, and it will definitely help. So basically, in this case, let's just call this current interaction because it's a little wordy there. So we want the current interaction to equal 8. And this has to happen when you're in the bedroom. This value is unique to the screen, like the code note says, so you do actually need to check the screen as well. Obviously, just checking the one address would not be good anyway, because that's a one condition achievement, and that's not good. But this wouldn't work without checking this. So the current screen, and I can see there it's 6 for the bedroom, so it's 6. All right, now we need to add a delta to make sure that we're restricting the achievement to triggering on the exact frame when a value changes. And the way I'm actually going to do that is when this interaction ends. So right now it's at 8, and I want it to actually trigger when that interaction ends. So that will be going back to FF. And now for the delta, in RATools, you just have to wrap the thing that you're checking the delta for in this function prev for previous. This is not called delta in here. It is prev for previous. And that will be checking the previous frame, just like delta does. And so that will just about do it right there. And this is not missable at progression or anything, so we won't worry about that. Let's just close off that function and go ahead and save. And let's check out RATools again. Again, if we refresh, this achievement will now show up on the side. And it's worth noting here as well, if your achievements don't show up on the side, that means there's some kind of error in your script. So let's say I forgot to close this bracket and it doesn't read the function right. It's not showing up there, but I am getting sort of this red line here showing that there's an error somewhere. It can be tricky to find those, but just if you're not seeing something you expect to see over here, there is an error in your script somewhere. And we can go ahead and update that on the local side, open the emulator back up again. And now once we go over to our achievements, you'll see that nothing is showing up here, and you want to hit reset all here. And reset basically just reloads everything from your disk. So if something is saved, and that's what we just did with RATools, we saved this to the files that the emulator is reading. We just have to make it reload those. So reset is what this does. Now this will get rid of any changes you've made locally here as well. So, be careful of that. But for the most part, in the RATools workflow, you'll just be using this to update it when you make changes to your achievements. And you'll see here, back to bed. And if we open up the logic, it's about what we expected. So we have the delta here for the interaction, the screen checking, and then the memory for the interaction. It is in kind of a weird order, which is my fault, so I'm just going to switch those around. I also just realized here, I don't know where I got this FF from. I just kind of misread or misremembered. You can see in the code note that 0 is when there's no interaction, so let's fix that as well. Now you can see the achievement here, and it looks as we expect. And if we go in-game, let's try and go back to bed. Our dog is going to wake us up here. We realize we have to get up again. And the achievement pops. So for this next set of achievements, I'm going to do my progression. And like I said, there's 4 items on this to-do list in the game that you have to accomplish to beat the game. And I'm just going to create another achievement here. So this title can just be file taxes, file your tax return. And we're going to, let's just make it 1 point for now. And for the logic, I mean, it'll look pretty similar to the last one. This is a pretty simple game, right? So we'll do our previous for mailed tax return. And again, these variable names right here are just, you can name them yourself. They do get auto-generated from RATools, but you can change that. You can name them whatever you want. So that's not really tied to anything, just whatever sort of makes the most sense for you. So we're going to do previous is 0. Current is 1, and then we need to care about what screen we're on. I suppose we don't need to, but to keep it from being a one condition achievement, we are going to enforce that. So let's just check and make sure that we are on the street, which is 5. So current screen equals 5, and because this is progression, we're going to do type equals, and put it in quotes, progression. You could also do win_condition and missable in here to do those. Now, let's close that. So I'm having 3 other achievements that share a lot in common with this one, right? They all check one of these sort of bit flip things, right? And they all check that you're on a certain screen, and they're all going to be progression. And they might even all be 1 point. So there's a lot in common between these. And this is one of the things that RATools and similar tools are really good at, is reusing code. So what I'm actually going to do here is create a function, and I'll call this to do task achievement. And so I'm creating my own function here, and all this function is going to do is call this achievement function, right? So right now, this just does the same thing as the achievement thing would, right? But so what I'm going to do is extract some of these things out to some parameters. So we're going to pass in to this custom function now our title. So we'll do title equals title instead. And so that means we're passing in the title to the achievement, and it's going to take this title for it. And we'll do the same thing for the description, because again, these are the things that change every time you want to call it. Anything that doesn't change, we can leave alone. So description equals description. Points equals 1, we're just going to leave alone, and we're just going to assume all of these are going to be 1 point for now. So for the trigger, the sort of shape of this is going to be the same, right? What's going to be different here is which screen we're on and which address is actually the one that is going to be checked for the bit flag, right? So we're going to pass in task bit flag. I'm calling it bit flag, even though it is just the whole byte flipping from 0 to 1. Obviously, that's just bit 0. It's not really important. Just, you know, naming things. It's one of the only 2 hard things in programming. So we're passing in task bit flag, and so we're just going to replace this with that, and then that will just kind of know when we pass it in, it's going to be the same thing. And then it's always going to be checking current screen to equal some value. So instead of passing in the memory address, we're just going to pass in the value for this one. So we're just going to pass in what screen you have to be on. So now instead of that, we're checking that current screen equals screen. And type equals progression, we can again leave alone. And so now we have this function here that exists to create any achievement of this shape that we want, and we can edit it however we want. So now instead of doing all that for all of the achievements that we need, we can just do to do task achievement, and we can make this the same as it was before. Okay, and you can sort of follow that all 4 of these things passed in the same order are going to be filled in to this achievement in the same places that they were originally. So right now, I'm just actually going to go ahead and save and show you what this looks like. And when we refresh RATools, we can see it's just showing up here, and it is what we typed. It's the name is file taxes, the description is file your tax return. It's checking that the screen is 5, and you can double check in the script here. We are just calling this to do task achievement function. Where this gets powerful is now we want to do this 3 more times. So let's just copy that 3 times, and now we can just fill in the custom parts and everything else will just work out. So caffeine addict, let's have this be the achievement for buy coffee filters. And then we're going to check that we bought coffee filters. And this happens on screen grocery store, which is, I will have to double check which one of these is the specific one because the store has a bunch of different screens in the aisles. Let me go double check which one is which there. Okay, so it looks like that one is 9. So we're going to change that to 9. And I'll just quickly fill in the other 2. All right, and so now we have 4 different achievements, and they're basically 1 line each in terms of the, sort of work that I did in order to create them, but they're actually, fully fledged achievements. Like, they're perfectly fine in terms of the logic, and I pretty much only had to do that work once. Now, in this case, it's kind of true that, are you really saving that much work? I mean, I think personally it is a little easier to read with everything just on 1 line here. Rather than having to do the title, description, points, progression, everything like that, and not having to type out the trigger. Although in this case, it is pretty simple logic. You can imagine if you had more complicated logic, if you had to have save protection, if you had to have cheat protection, if you had to have any of these things that, a lot of sets do need to have in every single achievement, you can imagine that this kind of thing would save a lot of work on your part, right? Especially if you're doing this in the GUI and just clicking through every time, clicking on the box, typing in the addresses for every single line. This kind of thing can save an absolute ton of work when you're making your achievements. And let's just save that. Let's check it out in RATools. Give it a refresh, and there is all 4 of our achievements. And you can see the only difference is where we specified the differences to be. Let's hit Control L and just update everything right there. And back in the game, if we open up our asset list, let's just deselect, hit reset all, and there they are right there. All right, for this next achievement, it's going to get a little bit more complicated. And the concept of it is I want the player to do 4 different interactions while in the same room. So this is not tracked in the game. We're going to have to do it with hit counts. So how do you do hit counts in RATools? So let's get the achievement boilerplate up. All right, so you remember the interaction ID that I used before for getting in the bed? This time there are 3 different interaction IDs. Actually, maybe 4. I haven't decided if I want talking to the roommate to be one of these. Let's just say 3 for now. There are 3 different interaction IDs that I want. So the idea is you're in the living room with your roommate and you try to eat their pizza, you try to take their phone, and you try to turn off the Wi-Fi when they're watching TV, and they get mad at you every time. I want the player to be able, or to have to do all of these things while you're in the room to trigger this achievement. I think that's fun. So basically, in order to save a hit count, or what we sometimes call a checkpoint hit, so it's just a hit where when this value becomes true, it will just lock to true until it gets reset. And in this case, it is the function called once. So anything you wrap in this once function is going to have a hit count of 1 put on it, and that will stay until it gets reset. And so in this case, I will want the current interaction to be the first one of these for the roommate's pizza is number 4. And for this, I'm also going to throw in the delta. And remember, that's prev in RATools. And I'm just going to say that the interaction is 0, just for a little bit of extra sort of security there, because this will ultimately end up triggering when all of these are hit. So that will act as our delta protection. Now, the other values for the current interaction that I want to look at here are 5 and 9. And this is another case where we can use sort of the automation to our advantage, right? So let's just go up here and let's make a separate variable called roommate interactions. And I'm going to make what's called an array. So this will open with a square bracket, and I'll just type in 4, 5, 9, and then close that up. And now this is just basically a list of numbers that RATools has access to. And what we want is to iterate over that array. So for each element in it, for this 4 and this 5 and this 9, create this hit count idea, right? And the way to do that is going to be a function called all of. So it kind of makes sense. You can remember it as being you want all of these things to be true. So it's all of, and the RATools wiki on GitHub, I have to say, is completely invaluable for coding in RATools. You will reference it a lot. I reference it a lot. I'm referencing it right now. And this is, it lists every useful thing you could think of that the language has to offer. And this is the thing we need in this scenario. So all of, and first we have to give it our inputs. So this will be our roommate interactions. And I'm going to throw this down on a separate line just to be a little more clear. And then what we pass in as the second argument here is another function where anything, it'll run that function for everything that you pass into the inputs and then just AND it all together because it's all of. There is another thing called any of, and that will OR them all together. But in this case, we want them all, so it's all of. And so we're going to take our interaction and do this little equals arrow sign. And that means for each interaction, we want to do once the current interaction equals that interaction and the previous one equals 0. And believe it or not, it is as simple as that. Let's just close off that all of thing. And that's it. So we have all our interactions, 4, 5, and 9. And you can kind of follow what's happening here. It's going to say once the current interaction equals all of those separately, and the previous one is delta, it's going to save a hit count. And that's it. And just, it's not done. We don't have a reset in here, but I want to save it really quick and just open it up in the regular logic editor so you can see what that translates to. And here it is. So again, for each of those numbers, 4, 5, and 9, it created these two lines where the current value has to equal that number and the previous value has to equal 0. And then it's going to save a hit count for that. And then it just did that for all three. And they all have to be true because they're just all here at the same time. Now, the reason the AND next is here is for the hit count. It's kind of outside the scope of the video to explain that exactly, but these are all just ANDed together. These three separate chains, this line of 1 and 2, and this line of 3 and 4, and this line of 5 and 6 are all sort of ANDed together by default. But you can see how this arose from what we typed in our RATools. Now let's head back over there. And you'll remember all of the interaction IDs are specific to a screen. So we have to put in this logic, what screen we're on. But we also want to reset based on something. And I think I'm fine with resetting based on the screen, because if you leave and come back, I think it's fine in terms of player experience. I think it's fine if you leave and come back and have to do this again. You're probably not going to do that if you're going for this achievement. I think it's fine. So the easiest thing is just to reset whenever you're not on this screen. And that should be fine for just having that be the entire reset of the thing, because it's not going to have that value on, booting the game or anything like that either. So to reset in RATools, this is another case where it's just kind of a different word that you have to keep in mind. It's the word never, and then you put in what you want your reset to be in here. So we're resetting when our screen is not equal to 8 is the living room number, and then we just close that off. And so now we have an achievement that will trigger when we do all of these things and reset when we leave the room. All right, hopefully that wasn't too hard to follow. I know this is probably a big jump up from what we were just doing, but bear with me a little more because I'm not done with this achievement. There's two things I want to add to it. First of all, there's another thing that you can do in this room, which is try to go into your roommate's room, and there is no interaction ID for that. It doesn't change, so we are going to need something different for that. And the way we're going to have to do it is to check what tile we're on, and I did write down in the code notes there what that has to be. And so we're going to look for our X tile being 0C and the Y tile being 0,4. And then for our delta check for this one, we can look for the previous Y tile being 5, because the only way to access this tile is to walk up at it from underneath. And then just like last time, we are going to wrap all of this in once. And even though this is not inside of what we're doing before, the only reason that this all of block here exists is to do the interaction ID. It's to do this specific check here. And we can do whatever we want outside of that. It's not going to screw anything up because this is outside of that and it's trying to do a similar thing. Let me just save this and open it in the editor to show you. And remember, each time you do this, you do have to refresh it in RATools and then right click over here and open, and then reset from the emulator. It's a bit of a process, but just keep all that in mind. And you can see over here in the logic, these first 6 lines is what we had originally in the all of call, and then this is what we added to it. It's just another chain. It ends in a hit count of 1, and it's just checking for this X position to be 0C and the Y position going from 5 to 4. And everything should just work the exact same. All right, there's one last achievement I want to code up on here because I think it could also be pretty demonstrative. And I'm going to show you the game's memory and talk about it a little bit to sort of prepare for it. So there's this mini game. It's like a little shoot 'em up, and there are enemy ships, and the enemy ships are all sprites in this list here, or objects or actors or whatever you want to call it. And I found this by ram digging. It was a little bit of a pain, but this is what's going on. Okay, this number 6 is related to the tiles somehow. I found by ram digging that it changes from 6 to A when the ship gets blown up. Okay, and this list is 15 actors long, and it repeats every, what is this, 10, 20, 2E. It repeats every 2E bytes. Okay, so it's the 6 here and the 6 here, and then it's down there and there and there and there, and you can see the pattern, and that repeats 15 times. So what we want, and the goal here is to count the ships that get blown up. Okay, what we want is to count whenever any of these values goes from 6 to A. Okay, that's the idea. So keep that in mind for what we're about to do in RATools. All right, so if you look at the code notes on the right, we have this actor 1 tile is equal to the byte at COE2, and this actor 2 tile is equal to the byte at C110. Now, we could define 15 different ones of these, and that's all well and good. That's probably still easier than clicking through and editing it 15 different times in the achievement GUI, but we can do better than that. So first of all, let's just define a function here, and let's call it actor tile, and we're going to pass in what we'll call an index. And let's figure out how we would get from this number to this number, basically. How do we map that? So we know that the first actor tile, and let's just say first actor, because we don't care about any of the other values here, we just care about this one address. Let's just say first actor is there. And then we can pull up Windows Calculator and figure out this offset, but let's just do it this way. Let's just make RAScript do it for us. So let's just say the offset is this minus this, and then you don't have to worry about making mistakes other than, I guess, typoing here. But this is just, as long as these numbers are right, this is always going to be right. So you know that that's how far you have to go in the memory between each one, right? If you're following. So the index then is going to be how many times we jump by this offset in order to arrive at this new number, right? So the let's call it the target address is going to be the first actor. That's where we start, right? That's the start of our list, plus the offset times this index that we want. So if we pass in 0, we're going to jump 0 times. If we pass in 2, we're going to jump 2 times, right? And then let's just go ahead and return the byte at this target address. And this byte is the way to access the memory in the actual game in the emulator. So this is the address that we want, and this is the value at that address. So now we know for any actor in this list of 15, as long as we pass in the right number, it's giving us this value that we care about going from 6 to A. But how do we use that? Well, let's get some achievement boilerplate again. So how do we use this, right? Well, let's say to start off, let's build it up. Let's say that all we care about right now is that the achievement triggers when the first ship in this list, when this value goes from 6 to A. So we would do actor tile 0, and it's 0 indexed, as many things in programming are. So just keep that in mind. This is not going to go from 1 to 15. It's going to go from 0 to 14. But for now, we only care about 0. So remember, this is that value, so we can check that it equals A. And we can check that the previous equals 6. Now let's go ahead and just look at that right away. And right there, C0E2, that was the first one. And this achievement is going to trigger when it goes from A to 6, which I realize I've done backwards, so let's fix that really quick. But now, let's think about it. So we don't just care about when it goes from 6 to A on this first slot, because we can't be sure which ship the slot is in. This is a thing that comes up all the time, whether it's like an inventory slot or like an enemy table or something. There's a list of things in memory, and you don't know which one you're going to end up interacting with, and you have to just check all of them. There's no way around it. And this is a really easy way to do that, right? So instead of just hard coding this 0 here, let's say that we want any of these. And the way that we do that is we can actually pass in a range here. So it's just the word range, and this is a function, and we're going to call it with the start and the stop. We're going to go from 0 to 14. This does include both ends, so we're going to go 0, 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 14. And then this next part, just like with the all of, we're going to pass in all the numbers that come out of that one at a time. So let's call that index again. And this arrow thing, now instead of 0, we're just passing in this index. And let's save that and see how it looks. And now we have 15 alts that are all checking for this mem delta combination. And the reason that this can't quite be all in core, you know, you'd have to have this and this, or this and this, or this and this, etc., etc. And that doesn't really work with the way that the achievement logic works. And that's fine. You can have a lot of alts, and it's really not that big of a deal. This achievement will end up not having all these alts, but just keep that in mind. If this is what we wanted ultimately, we would probably just add a check here. If it was just destroy one ship, then just a check here to make sure we're in the Zap Zap game, this would be fine. But if you'll notice, I said that I want this to be destroying 5 ships. So how do we get there? Let's do that. This is actually going to be a little bit simpler than you might think. All we have to do is use a different built-in function of RAScript. So instead of any of, it's called tally of. And tally is sort of what RATools looks at hit counts as. So you can tally anything you want. You can wrap a tally around any condition, and it will just make that a hit count, and you have to give it a number for the hit target, and that's it. When we used once up here, that's exactly the same as saying tally of 1. And you can do that with any number you want. Tally of, the difference is it's basically that plus this idea of iterating over something that we used before. So we're doing the exact same thing as we were before, except instead of just saying this or this or this or this with all the different indices, we're actually just saying count up how many times any of those are true and add them all up into a hit target. And in this case, we're going for an actual target, and we're going for a target of 5. And that's basically all there is to it. And let's check out how that changed our logic. Okay, so it's pretty different. Like I said, no alt groups. All this is in core now because it's just a big add hits chain. And if you count, or just, look at the ID, there's 30 lines here, 30 pairs of lines, or 15 pairs. 30 lines total, 15 pairs of lines, which are each this mem delta combination, where it's checking that it goes from 6 to A. So you're counting how many times this goes from 6 to A, how many times this goes from 6 to A, how many times this goes from 6 to A, and so on. And you're all adding it up into this final line of the chain, and the hit target is 5. And for one last trick, we can just go ahead and take this entire thing, make sure to put brackets around it, and just wrap this in a measured. And that is just going to add a measured flag to that whole chain. And it's basically going to work exactly as you expect. We're just measuring now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we're going to trigger this when we kill 5 ships. And of course, we're going to have to add in a reset here as well, because we're using hit counts, and we can just reset whenever we're not playing Zap Zap. So whenever the current screen is not 0x36. And there's actually something we want to add to this condition in here as well. And it's something I forgot about quickly. This game can also end when the enemy ship hits your ship. And this condition also gets hit there even if you didn't kill their ship. I don't think that should count towards this achievement. So we're also just going to check that screen shake is 0 during the ship dying and the screen shake being 0 is just because the instant that your ship gets hit, the screen starts shaking. And that's the best I could find with my ram digging. It's not perfectly ideal. I don't think there is a game over flag that gets set that quickly, but these are the sort of workarounds that you have to make sometimes. A little bit of a teaching moment here as well, because I realized that I switched these around previously when we just had the one ship, and I realized I did it backwards. I switched it wrong, and it was right the first time, so I have to switch it back. So I actually have to make the previous one equal to 6 and the current one equal to A. Now, I would have had to update that 15 different times in the achievement logic if I realized that at some point, but right now it's a 2-second fix, and that's completely fantastic. Not repeating yourself is a core principle of any sort of programming, and it applies to achievement logic really well. Here we are inside Zap Zap. We can see that measured pop-up counting whenever I kill the ships. And I died, so it's going to reset, but we can be fairly sure that the achievement would have worked if I didn't suck at the game. All right, that's about as complicated as we're going to get in terms of the achievements, so I'll stop that there. But for the very last thing, we're going to make a leaderboard. And for the leaderboards for this game, I think there's pretty much just one that I want, and it's going to be Zap Zap. So that it comes at an apt time because we just finished the Zap Zap achievement. I think it's going to be pretty similar. And to make a leaderboard in RAScript, it's just leaderboard, and there's a lot of different things that you want to type in here. So you want your title, your description, and now you have your 4 different groups the exact same way as you have them in the achievement editor. So you have your start, your cancel, your submit, and your value. And you also have your value format. And in this case, our format is just going to be value, because we just want a straight up number. We're counting the number of ships destroyed. You can do seconds, frames, it'll convert to a time. You can do points and it'll get padded. This is very similar to the rich presence macros in a lot of cases, and the RATools wiki and the RA docs also have all the leaderboard formats that are available to you. And then there is also a lower is better parameter for things like speedruns or, low score leaderboards, which is not relevant here because this is a high score leaderboard. So for our start, which should also be delta protected, we're going to say we go from current screen. Well, we say our current screen is 36 and the previous current screen, the Zap Zap title screen, is on screen 2F. So that should be good there. For our cancel, we'll just say the current screen doesn't equal 36 and the current screen doesn't equal 31, which is the Zap Zap game over. So if the current screen gets to anything else, it must mean you reset the game or something. So let's just cancel the leaderboard there. For submit, let's just say the current screen is that game over screen, and previously it was 36. And now for the value. So we want to count the ships destroyed. We just did that, you may notice, right? In the achievement, we were using it to count to 5, but here we're just trying to count it. And now it would be easy, right, to just copy and paste this. But again, what I said before, if I notice another problem where I have to switch around some values or anything like that, I'd have to change it in 2 places. I don't want to do that simply because it's a lot easier to make mistakes that way. I want to leverage the tools that RAScript is giving to me and be able to write things once. And we can do that simply by making a function called ships destroyed. And we can just throw in what we had before, clean it up a little bit, and make sure we return that. And we can throw in here, instead of this, let's just get rid of that, ships destroyed. And down here for our value, ships destroyed. Now, there is one slight issue, which is this number, right? So we're not counting to 5 anymore. We're counting up indefinitely, which means this has to be set to 0. But down here, we want it set to 5. Now, again, you know, we could copy this over, make one of them 0 and one of them 5. But no, we don't want to do that. We're passing in the count. And then we're just making this the count. So down here, we're passing in a count of 5. Down here, we're passing in a count of 0. Make sure you throw a comma in there. And if we head back into RATools and refresh, you can see our high score leaderboard is there. This is the exact same code. And it's very similar, at least to what we use for the achievement. Let's update that. And let's go have a look in our game. Let's go to all leaderboards, reset, make sure it's active. And let's check out how that looks. And we're playing, and when this gets into the game, we should see the leaderboard has started, and there is a cuss stuck on screen, but you can see down there in the corner, our ships destroyed count is counting up, as it should be. Again, if I didn't suck really bad at this, you can see it's counting up, and it works. And if we die, then we should see the leaderboard submit, and my high score is 3. And there you go. So guys, hopefully you can see how useful it can be to use a tool like RAScript to automate your achievement development, to make sure you can reuse bits of complicated code so that if you make a mistake, you only have to fix it in one place rather than sometimes, honestly, hundreds of places. I've made sets that straight up would not be possible in a reasonable amount of time without some kind of tool like this. I highly recommend using it. It is a little bit of a different skill set than just learning the logic, and this is not a replacement for learning how the logic works. You really still have to know how it works, the ins and outs of it. You have to know what you're trying to end up with on the output in order to know what to type into your script. So it is a lot to learn for sure, but hopefully this helped a little bit and showed that it doesn't have to be super complicated. You kind of get to choose how complicated you get with it, but the deeper you get into it, I think the more helpful it can be. Hopefully that was helpful. I'll have the links to the RATools GitHub, I guess, in the description of the video, and the wiki is on there, and that's all the documentation you should need for this. If you're a junior dev watching this, there is a thread in the junior dev request channel on Discord that you can ask all your RATools questions in, or just in the junior devs channel. And there is also an RATools channel in the Discord itself, which junior devs don't have permission to post in, but it is read only for them. So you can search through there if you're encountering a problem and you think somebody might have encountered it before. And as always, feel free to ask any questions to basically anyone at any time. Okay. Thank you very much, and I hope this helped. Good luck.